Harley-Davidson just posted a 12% drop in global retail sales. But at the same time, Royal Enfield grew 46% internationally. Riders are not quitting motorcycles. They are just walking into different showrooms with different checkbooks. Number 1 on this list is the machine that Harley's own engineers reportedly ride when nobody from the dealership is watching. Number 10 will surprise you. Every single bike here costs less, performs better, or both. Most of them do. All three. Let us get into it. Kicking off at number 10, 2026, Honda Shadow Phantom, the ghost that never breaks. The Honda Shadow has been quietly selling in massive numbers for years, while completely flying under the radar. The 2026 Shadow Phantom sits at $8,699. The Harley Softail standard costs $14,999. That $6,000 gap is a vacation. It is 3 years of insurance. It is a full set of gear with money left over for gas and poor decisions. And you are spending less on a bike that will almost certainly outlast the Harley it is competing against. The Shadow uses a 745 cubic centimeters liquid-cooled V-twin. It weighs 543 pounds. The whole thing is blacked out from tip to tail, so deliberately understated that it reads as more menacing than chrome ever did. Shaft drive means no chain to lube, no belt to snap on a dark highway, and no drivetrain drama of any kind at any time. You change the oil, you check the tires, the bike runs. A commuter in Seattle bought one in 2021 for $8,000 and ridden it through 4 Pacific Northwest winters, the kind where the weather is not so much a season as a personality disorder. 35,000 miles, 0 unplanned repairs. He parks it outside. He rides it in the rain. He treats it like infrastructure. A lot of Harley riders reach a point where the specialized tools, the dealership intervals, and the background financial dread of something expensive failing on a back road starts to feel less like motorcycle ownership and more like a subscription service nobody asked to sign up for. The Shadow Phantom cancels that subscription entirely. The Shadow's blacked-out look is also so convincing that multiple owners have reported receiving extra road space from drivers who were not entirely sure what branch of law enforcement was behind them. Honda has no official comment. The owners consider it a standard feature. It is also worth knowing that the Shadow Phantom's shaft drive gives it a specific long-distance advantage that belt drive bikes cannot match on extended tours. 0 drivetrain wear anxiety over multi-day riding. No inspecting the belt every morning. No wondering if that slight vibration at 70 miles per hour is the beginning of something expensive. You ride. The bike handles the rest. The Shadow earns its place by being relentlessly, stubbornly reliable. Clean used examples are hard to find because the people who bought them kept them. That is either a testament to the ownership experience or a logistical headache depending on which side of the transaction you are standing on. The machine just ahead earned its place in a completely different way. It arrived looking like it wanted to start something. Roaring into number 9, Suzuki Boulevard M109R, the one that wants to fight you and will win. If subtlety is on your priority list, skip this entry entirely and go buy a sensible sedan. The Suzuki Boulevard M109R is priced at $15,799. The Harley breakout, its nearest competitor in attitude and raw displacement, demands $22,499. That is a $6,700 gap you could fill with a second motorcycle, a full riding wardrobe, and a storage unit to keep them both in. This machine features a 1,783 cubic centimeters liquid-cooled V-twin with pistons the size of coffee cans, a 765-pound wet curb weight, and a massive 240 series rear tire. According to Suzuki's factory specifications, it generates 118 pound-feet of torque, delivered with the kind of urgency that straightens your arms whether you plan for it or not. The rear tire from the factory is a massive 240-section unit. It looks like Suzuki rated a steamroller and kept the most useful component. A retiree in Phoenix traded his Fat Boy for the M109R after a test ride he described as alarming in the best possible way. He has since put 45,000 miles on it. Shaft drive means he has touched the drivetrain exactly 0 times since purchase. Liquid cooling means it does not transform into a radiator against his right leg at desert stoplights. His exact words, "The Harley looked better in the garage, the Suzuki is better everywhere else." The M109R is a factory-built spectacle that also performs. It is excessive. It is loud. It earns every single piece of attention it receives. You park it at a gas station and watch conversations stop while people walk over to look at the tire. For a machine that looks this unhinged, it is pleasant to live with day to day. Shaft drive means 0 chain adjustments, 0 belt inspections, 0 surprise drivetrain failures in inconvenient locations. It is the mechanical equivalent of someone who looks like absolute chaos on the outside and turns out to have an extremely organized filing system. That was a bike built entirely on the principle that more is more. What follows is a machine that spent its entire engineering budget on a completely opposite principle, and it physically twists sideways just to prove it when you hit the starter button. These breakdowns take real research, and there are riders finding machines like this every single week who never hear about them through the usual channels. If this is landing for you, hit that subscribe button. Every week we find more of these. And you do not want to be the last one at the dealership when the word finally gets out. Charging into number 8. BMW R18, the German that arrived to the cruiser party, very late and extremely overdressed. When BMW decided they wanted a piece of the American heavyweight cruiser market, they did not dip their toes in gently. The BMW R18 starts around $14,995, a meaningful step below the Harley Fat Boy 114 at $21,999. $7,000 separates them. That is a number worth repeating. BMW built the largest 2-cylinder boxer engine in their entire history specifically for this machine. 1,802 cubic centimeters. The cylinders stick straight out of the sides like the bike is daring you to park it in a tight space. When you press the starter button, the entire motorcycle twists sideways because of the rotational mass of the engine internals. It is theatrical in a way that feels engineered rather than accidental, because it clearly, intentionally was. The R18 weighs 761 pounds. Barely any plastic anywhere on the machine. The drive shaft is fully exposed and nickel-plated, spinning in the open air like BMW put it there specifically so you would watch the engineering do its job. Every surface you touch feels thick and expensive in a way that $7,000 bikes simply cannot match. A retired engineer in Chicago spent 30 years on Harleys before he stood next to the R18 in a showroom and started reading the engine like a textbook. He stayed for 20 minutes before he bought it. According to him, the BMW dealership experience felt like a different universe. No pressure, no branded merchandise stacked near the register, no one suggesting you also purchase a leather jacket with a logo on the back. Just espresso and a very serious machine sitting in a clean room. The R18 also has an electric reverse assist on a motorcycle. BMW looked at the problem of maneuvering a 761-pound machine out of a sloped parking spot in 90-degree heat and decided that problem simply did not need to exist. It works via the starter motor, engaged through a mechanical hand lever on the left side of the crankcase, not a traditional gear inside the transmission stack, but the practical result is identical. Every rider who has watched someone drop a heavy bike in a parking lot or has been that someone understands immediately why this matters. One practical note most reviews miss. The R18's fuel range is generous by cruiser standards, with a 5.3-gallon tank that makes long highway stints between fuel stops entirely realistic. On a cross-country ride, that translates to fewer stops, less fuss, and more time doing the actual thing you bought the motorcycle to do. BMW's service infrastructure is also worth noting. Every service documented, every part logged. A well-maintained R18 has a provenance that makes its used market value predictable in a way that most motorcycles never achieve. You always know exactly what you are buying. Germany built something exceptional. Britain's response looks like it arrived from a completely different century and handles better than bikes built last Tuesday. Arriving impeccably at number 7, Triumph Bonneville Bobber. Triumph has been building extraordinary motorcycles since before your grandfather was born. The 2026 Bonneville Bobber is priced at $13,995. The Harley Street Bob sits at $16,999. $3,000 stays in your pocket before you even pick a color. The Triumph Bobber looks exactly like a hardtail from 1942. Floating single seat, rigid-looking rear end, the whole visual language of a machine that should punish your spine on anything rougher than a putting green. It does not. Triumph HID, the rear monoshock, directly underneath the seat, so completely that most people who see it in person assume you are bouncing directly on the rigid frame. You are sitting on a fully modern suspension setup wearing a wartime costume. The throttle body covers, styled as dual carbs, are equally brilliant, period-correct housings that open up to reveal modern fuel injection components inside. Vintage from 3 feet away, 21st century fuel mapping from the inside. 1,200 cubic centimeters parallel twin. Wet curb weight approximately 595 pounds. Enough cornering clearance to actually push it in the canyons without the foot peg sending you an urgent memo about your life choices. A marketing director in Austin traded his Street Bob for the Triumph after his wife pointed out, accurately and without being asked, that it costs $3,000 less and photographs better. He could not construct a counter-argument. He now takes the long way home every single day, specifically using roads he had previously avoided because the Street Bob punished him on broken pavement. The exhaust note is worth its own sentence. Automotive journalists keep reaching for words like authoritative and characterful, which is what people write when they cannot print their actual reaction to hearing the thing for the first time. It is simply the right sound for the way this bike looks. The whole package is coherent in a way that machines at double the price sometimes fail to achieve. Clean Triumph. Bobber examples hold their value with unusual stubbornness for a European motorcycle in the American market. The financial math across a full ownership cycle, bought 3,000 lower, sold at comparable residual, is more competitive than most buyers ever calculate. It literally custom fits to your body before you leave the showroom, using a sport bike engine to do it. Sliding into number 6, 2026 Kawasaki Vulcan S, built for your body, priced for your sanity. The 2026 Kawasaki Vulcan S starts at $7,399. The Harley Nightster sits at $9,999. Kawasaki brought a spreadsheet to a bar fight and left with a trophy. When you buy the Vulcan S, the dealer does something no other cruiser manufacturer does at zero extra cost. They fit the motorcycle to your specific body before you ride out. Seat, handlebar reach, foot peg position, all adjusted to match your height and reach. 5'2", sorted immediately. 6'4", also sorted. Many Harley riders spend thousands on aftermarket seats, custom risers, and forward controls just to make their bike ergonomically survivable. Kawasaki eliminates that entirely on the showroom floor. Under the cruiser styling lives the 649 cubic centimeters parallel twin from the Kawasaki Ninja 6.5. Oh, it loves to rev high, which is backward behavior for a cruiser, and makes it a genuine blast on a winding back road in a way that lazy V Twin S simply cannot match. The whole package weighs 498 pounds, the lightest machine on this entire list. A nurse in Nashville bought the Vulcan S after dropping her previous Harley twice in parking lots and concluding that motorcycle ownership should not also function as an unplanned core workout. The Kawasaki dealer spent 45 minutes fitting the bike to her before she rode out. She has not dropped it once in 2 years of daily commuting. Her exact assessment: the Harley was beautiful but terrifying. The Vulcan S, she said, just works. The insurance cost is also worth a mention. A 649cc parallel twin at this price point is dramatically cheaper to insure than anything Harley builds. In several markets, the annual savings cover a complete set of riding gear. Kawasaki may have built this bike for budget-conscious beginners. The retention data suggests they accidentally built the machine that keeps people riding for decades because the financial barrier to entry never becomes a reason to stop. The Vulcan S won by fitting every rider before they asked. Just ahead is the spiritual successor to the Harley Sportster, built by people who apparently never tire of proving that Japanese engineering simply performs better. And they have been waiting very patiently for this exact moment. We are halfway through, and every machine on this list has a specific reason real buyers are choosing it over Milwaukee iron. If you know a rider about to spend 15 grand on a Harley without seeing this first, put this video in front of them. And while you are here, hit that like button. One tap tells the algorithm this kind of unfiltered comparison belongs in front of more riders who actually need it. Thundering into number 5, 2026, Yamaha Bolt R-Spec, the Sportster replacement. Nobody announced. Harley killed the air-cooled Evolution Sportster and left a very specific kind of rider without a home. Yamaha made no press announcement. They just kept building the Bolt R-Spec at $8,999, $1,000 less than the Nightster, and waited for those riders to arrive. They did. The Bolt R-Spec features a 942 cubic centimeters air-cooled V-twin, visible cooling fins, classic teardrop tank. That loping, lumpy exhaust note cruiser riders have spent decades describing as the sound of a good weekend. It weighs 542 pounds and is built to the standard of something that expects to run indefinitely on nothing but oil changes and honest neglect. The running joke about the Bolt is that the only thing it ever demands is fuel and the occasional confirmation that the tires are still round. You will never find a mysterious puddle under it in the garage. You will never experience an electrical gremlin that ruins a Sunday morning. You will never stand on the side of a highway wondering if your roadside membership is still active and whether they will find you before dark. A fabricator in Portland bought the Bolt as the base for a bobber build. He planned to start modifying it immediately. According to him, it ran so well from the factory that he spent 6 months just riding the stock machine before he could bring himself to touch a single component. He eventually swapped the seat, wrapped the pipes, and chopped the fenders over 2 weekends. Total custom cost, $800. The result looks like a $5,000 custom. The Harley he originally wanted as a base would have needed mechanical attention before the build even started. Parts availability for the Bolt is essentially unlimited. Every Yamaha dealer stocks what you need, prices are reasonable, and independent mechanics do not need special certification to work on it. That sounds unremarkable until you have spent 3 weeks waiting for a specialty Harley component that ships from a single warehouse in Milwaukee. The Bolt simply never puts you in that situation. The sound of the Bolt deserves specific mention because it is the thing Sportster loyalists most worried about losing when Harley discontinued the Evolution engine, and it is the thing the Bolt quietly delivers. That air-cooled thump at idle, that loping cadence at low RPM that vibrates slightly through the seat, and the pegs in a way that feels mechanical and honest rather than smoothed and filtered. Yamaha did not engineer that out in the name of refinement. They left it in deliberately. They knew exactly what they were building. The Bolt wins by replacing something beloved without trying to imitate it. The machine coming up next does the opposite entirely. Traditionalists were not amused, but new riders immediately understood exactly what they were looking at. Arriving at number 4, 2026, Honda Rebel 1100, the automatic motorcycle that changed everyone's mind. Honda has always been the brilliant overachiever. The 2026 Rebel 1100 starts at $9,699. Harley reportedly dropped the Nightster to $9,999 specifically to compete. They closed the gap to $300 and still lost the argument on paper, at the test ride, and in the ownership survey data. The DCT option, dual clutch transmission, is where the traditionalist fury begins and the practically minded riders start paying close attention. Yes, it is an automatic motorcycle. Before anyone reaches for a dramatic metaphor about the collapse of Western riding culture, here is the actual case. Riding in heavy stop-and-go traffic with a stiff clutch lever is a chore that ends with a cramped left hand, depleted patience, and the nagging awareness that this was supposed to be enjoyable. The Rebel 1100 DCT removes the clutch lever and foot shifter entirely. You twist the grip, the machine handles the rest, and it shifts faster and smoother than any human ever could. City riding transforms from a grinding endurance exercise into the effortless experience it was always supposed to be. Underneath the blacked-out bobber styling lives, the exact same 1,084 cubic centimeters parallel twin Honda uses in their Africa Twin Adventure machine. 86 horsepower in 509 pounds. Standard cruise control, traction control, ABS, and multiple riding modes. Superbike grade technology wearing a dark Street Fighter disguise and asking for $9,699. A dentist in San Diego tried to learn to ride on a manual bike 3 years before the Rebel existed. He stalled it at the same intersection 4 times in a row in front of a car that honked every single time. He found this demoralizing. He bought the Rebel DCT. Within 2 weeks, he was lane splitting through city traffic with a level of confidence his instructor described as not typical. He considers that a compliment. He has since put 12,000 miles on the machine, and his only complaint is that it occasionally starts raining before he planned for rain. The DCT also does something nobody discusses enough in cruiser circles. It makes the bike accessible to riders returning after a long break. A rider in their mid-50s whose muscle memory for clutch work faded years ago, whose left knee is no longer a precision instrument, then the Rebel DCT gives that person a clear, dignified, capable path back to riding. Honda built it to grow the sport. Based on what Honda dealership demographic data shows for the past 3 years, it is working. It is a Honda. The engineering margins are so wide that the machine will outlast most reasonable expectations. Honda has been building engines this way for 50 years and shows no intention of stopping. Germany, Britain, Japan, and American competition have all made their cases. Now comes the brand that is conquering international markets, one $7,000 motorcycle at a time. And the math behind it is almost offensive to look at. Pressing on at number 3, 2026 Royal Enfield Super Meteor 650, the most fun per dollar on this entire list. The global sales shift makes perfect sense once you see the number. The Royal Enfield Super Meteor 650 starts at $6,999. The Harley Softail Standard costs $14,999. That is not a discount. That is a completely different financial tier. This is not a budget brand knockoff with rattling panels and a powertrain you have to apologize for at every stoplight. The Super Meteor is drenched in high-quality paint, polished aluminum, and real steel fenders. The 648 cubic centimeters parallel twin is smoother than freshly laid asphalt. The gearbox clicks into place with a satisfying precision that makes you shift for the pleasure of it rather than out of mechanical necessity. It weighs 531 pounds, which matters because a meaningful number of riders are getting older and would rather not announce that wrestling an 800-pound bagger out of a gravel driveway on a Sunday morning has quietly transitioned from weekend ritual to lower back incident waiting to happen. The Super Meteor is fully manageable. It goes where you point it without a fight, a negotiation, or any physical consequence the following Monday. A retired firefighter in Nashville bought it as a retirement present to himself after 25 years on Harleys. He expected to feel like he was downgrading. He did not feel that at all. According to him, the riding experience was exactly what he had always wanted. Sunday back roads, unhurried pace, gorgeous styling, zero mechanical anxiety, without the $8,000 brand premium he had always assumed was simply the cost of entry. At the Royal Enfield dealer, nobody tried to sell him a branded item of any kind. He bought the motorcycle, shook one hand, and left. He found that experience very refreshing. According to Royal Enfield's own service documentation, the 648cc parallel twin requires a valve adjustment every 6,000 miles. A Harley Softail requires dealer service every 5,000 miles. You multiply that service interval difference over 5 years of ownership, and the cost gap becomes substantial. The kind of substantial that changes the financial calculation of what this motorcycle actually costs to live with. The Super Meteor is cheap to buy. It is also cheap to keep. That combination at this level of build quality is not normal. Royal Enfield's global parts network has also expanded dramatically since 2020. You can source parts in markets where Harley dealerships do not exist. For riders in rural areas who have waited weeks for a component to ship from Milwaukee, that infrastructure is not a footnote. It is a reason to switch. That's not all. The machine holding number 2 has been dismantling Harley Sportster market methodically, year by year, with a name that used to mean something entirely different in American motorcycling history, and it is worth knowing what they actually built before you assume you already know. We are down to the final 2, and this is where the conversation gets even more uncomfortable for Harley. If you are finding this breakdown useful, now is a good time to comment and tell us which bike you would like to own. So close at number 2, 2026 Indian Scout Bobber, the American rival. Winning on every technical metric, Indian versus Harley, the oldest rivalry in American motorcycling. These two brands have been chasing the same riders since before either of them had a marketing department. The 2026 Indian Scout Bobber starts at $12,999. The comparable Harley Softail Standard sits at $14,999. $2,000 separates them before anyone negotiates anything. That price difference matters, but it is not the reason riders are crossing the aisle in the numbers they currently are. The reason is what actually happens when you ride the Scout Bobber back-to-back with a comparable Harley, specifically the part where the Indian is noticeably faster, noticeably more refined, and noticeably more modern without appearing to be any of those things from a standing distance. The 2026 Scout Bobber comes standard with the updated 1,250 cubic centimeters, Speed Plus liquid-cooled V-twin, pushing 105 horsepower and 78 pound-feet of torque, replacing the previous 1,133 cubic centimeters block. No modifications, no exhaust swap, no tuning appointment. The machine arrives ready to perform, which should be completely unremarkable, but remains somehow newsworthy in certain corners of the cruiser world where that standard has never been the expectation. At 522 pounds, with a deliberately low center of gravity, the Scout handles with a nimbleness that consistently surprises riders arriving from heavier cruisers. The mirrors stay clear at highway speeds. The power delivery is smooth and progressive all the way to redline. The factory matte finish looks like a $12,000 custom build because Indian's design team is paying close attention to the custom market and building those cues in from the beginning rather than charging extra for them later. A high school teacher in Denver traded his Harley Iron 1200 for the Scout Bobber after a test ride he described as embarrassing for my previous decision. His words. According to him, the Scout made the Iron feel like it had been assembled by people who had only heard about motorcycles secondhand. He has since put 22,000 miles on the Scout in 18 months. The mirrors work. The engine pulls hard in every gear. He said he misses nothing about the previous machine except the brand pride, and that faded inside the first week. The Scout Bobber's liquid cooling also means it does not heat soak at extended stoplights the way air-cooled alternatives do. On a 95-degree afternoon in city traffic, that is the difference between an enjoyable ride and a decision you begin quietly regretting around mile 12. Temperature management never appears in marketing brochures. It is a quality-of-life detail you notice every time you ride in warm weather. And in most of the United States, that is most of the riding season. Indian is not trying to imitate Harley. Indian is trying to be better than Harley. On every measurable technical metric, the Scout Bobber is currently winning that argument with a confidence that is somehow more unsettling than anything louder would be. One machine remains. It costs slightly more than its Harley equivalent, and yet the waiting lists are longer, the reviews are more one-sided, and the riders who have made the switch are not coming back. The reason is simple. It is what happens the moment you actually ride it. And saving the absolute best for number 1, 2026 Indian Challenger, the machine-keeping Harley executives awake. The base. Harley-Davidson Road Glide starts around $25,999. The 2026 Indian Challenger starts at $27,999. The Indian is more expensive. And yet loyal, high-mileage Harley touring riders are trading in their Milwaukee iron in numbers that show up uncomfortably in quarterly earnings calls. The explanation is not complex once you ride both machines back to back. For decades, the standard operating procedure for buying a Harley touring bagger involved the following entirely predictable ritual. Take delivery, admire the machine for approximately 45 minutes, then immediately spend $3,000 on exhaust, cams, and tuning just to make it confident enough to merge onto a highway ahead of traffic. Indian observed this for several years, noted that riders were paying full price for substantially less than full performance, and built something that did not need to be modified just to function as advertised. The Challenger comes standard with the Power Plus 108, a 108 cubic inch, fully liquid-cooled V-twin that produces 122 horsepower and 128 pound-feet of torque. Factory specification: 0 aftermarket intervention. You pull away from a standard road glide at any stoplight, in any gear, on any day, without trying. The chassis engineering is where the story gets interesting. Indian bolted the front fairing directly to the frame instead of the handlebars. This sounds minor until you hit a strong crosswind on the interstate at 75 miles per hour. On a traditional bagger, that force goes into your steering inputs, and you fight the bars the entire way through. On the Challenger, it goes into the chassis. You do not feel it, you just ride. Combine that with standard inverted front forks, Brembo brakes, and suspension that absorbs highway imperfections instead of transmitting them directly to your vertebrae, and you have an 831-pound touring machine that handles with a confidence its weight has no business allowing. A long-haul trucking dispatcher in Nashville spent 20 years working through every major Harley touring model. He put 45,000 miles on his last road glide in 3 years. He test rode the Challenger at a dealer demo event and asked to speak to the sales manager before the test ride was over. According to him, the power difference was drastic, his exact words, and once you feel the Power Plus engine pull hard in third gear, going back to air-cooled limitations feels like choosing a smaller screen and insisting to yourself that it is fine. He traded in. He has since ridden the Challenger from Nashville to Seattle and back without a single mechanical complaint. High mileage. Harley touring riders are discovering that American heritage and sport touring performance do not have to be mutually exclusive. The Challenger delivers both from the factory for a price that is slightly higher than the competition and significantly more justified than anything else currently in the bagger category. It is a turnkey solution to a problem the bagger market spent 15 years waiting for someone to finally solve. Indian solved it. The riders have noticed. Harley is still building gorgeous machines. They always have been. But the competition is no longer content to watch from a distance. They are building better ones at lower prices, with longer service intervals and enough raw performance to make the side-by-side comparison uncomfortable. Want to know which of these engines holds up best after 100,000 miles of real-world riding? Click the video on your left. I will see you there.